Chapter 16 of The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 16. The Third Murder. Spade went into the Hotel Sutter and telephoned the Alexandria. Gutman was not in. No member of Gutman's party was in. Spade telephoned the Belvedere. Cairo was not in, had not been in that day. Spade went to his office. A swart, greasy man in notable clothes was waiting in the outer room. Effie Perrine, indicating the swart man, said, "This gentleman wishes to see you, Mr. Spade." Spade smiled and bowed and opened the inner door. "Come in." Before following the man in, Spade asked Effie Perrine, "Any news on that other matter?" "No, sir." The swart man was the proprietor of a Market Street moving picture theater. He suspected one of his cashiers and a doorman of colluding to defraud him. Spade hurried him through the story, promised to take care of it, asked for and received $50, and got rid of him in less than half an hour. When the corridor door had closed behind the showman, Effie Perrine came into the inner office. Her sunburned face was worried and questioning. "You haven't found her?" she asked. He shook his head and went on stroking his bruised temple lightly in circles with his fingertips. "How is it?" she asked. "All right, but I've got plenty of headache." She went around and stood behind him, putting his hand down, stroking his temple with her thin fingers. He leaned back until the back of his head, over the chair top, rested against her breast, and said, "You're an angel." She bent her head forward over his and looked down at his face. "You've got to find her, Sam. It's more than a day, and she—" He stirred impatiently and interrupted her. "I haven't got to do anything. But if you'll let me rest this damned head a minute or two, I'll go out and find her." She murmured, "Poor head," and stroked it in silence for a little while. Then she asked, "You know where she is?" The telephone bell rang. Spade picked up the telephone and said, "Hello. Yes, Sid, it came out all right. No, sure. He got snotty, but so did I. He's nursing a gambler's war-pipe dream. Well, we didn't kiss when we parted. I declared my weight and walked out on him. That's something for you to worry about. Right. Bye." He put the telephone down and leaned back in his chair again. Effie Perrine came from behind him and stood at his side. She demanded, "Do you think you know where she is, Sam?" "I know where she went," he replied in a grudging tone. "Where?" She was excited. "Down to the boat you saw burning." Her eyes opened until their brown was surrounded by white. "You went down there?" It was not a question. "I did not," Spade said. Effie Perrine stamped her foot. "Sam!" she cried angrily. "She may be—" "She went down there," he said in a surly voice. "She wasn't taken. She went down there instead of to your house when she learned the boat had come in. Well, what the hell? Am I supposed to run around after my clients begging them to let me help them?" "But, Sam, when I told you the boat was on fire—" "That was at noon, and I had a date with Polehouse and another with Brian to keep." She glared at him between tightened lids. "Sam Spade," she said, "you're the most contemptible man God ever made when you want to be. Because she did something without confiding in you, you'd sit here and do nothing when you know she's in danger, when you know she might be—" Spade's face flushed. He said stubbornly, "She's pretty capable of taking care of herself, and she knows where to come when she thinks she needs help, and when it suits her." "That's spite," the girl cried, "and that's all it is. You're sore because she did something on her own hook without telling you. Why shouldn't she? You're not so damned honest, and you haven't been so much on the level with her that she could trust you implicitly." Spade said, "That's enough of that." His tone brought a brief uneasy glint into her hot eyes, but she tossed her head and the glint vanished. Her boyish mouth was drawn taut and small. She said, "If you don't go down there this very minute, I will, and I'll take the police down there." Her voice trembled on the last words, broke, and was thin and wailing. "Oh, Sam, go!" He stood up, cursing her. Then he said, "Eh, it'll be easier on my head than sitting here listening to you squawk." He looked at his watch. "You might as well lock up and go home." She said, "I won't. I'm going to wait until you come back." He said, "Do as you damned please," put his hat on, flinched, took it off, and went out carrying it in his hand. An hour and a half later, at 20 minutes past 5, Spade returned. He was cheerful. He came in asking, "What makes you so hard to get along with, sweetheart?" "Me?" "Yes, you." He put a finger on the tip of Effie Perine's nose and flattened it. He put his hands under her elbows, lifted her straight up, and kissed her chin. He set her down on the floor again and asked, "Anything happen while I was gone?" "Luke, what's-his-name, at the Belvedere called up to tell you Cairo has returned. That was about half an hour ago." Spade snapped his mouth shut, turned with a long step, and started for the door. "Did you find her?" the girl called. "Tell you about it when I'm back," he replied without pausing, and hurried out. A taxicab deposited Spade at the Belvedere within 10 minutes of his departure from his office. He found Luke in the lobby. The hotel detective came grinning and shaking his head to meet him. "15 minutes late," he said. "Your bird has fluttered." Spade cursed. "Checked out. Gone, bag and baggage," Luke said. He took a battered memorandum book from a vest pocket, licked his thumb, thumbed pages, and held the book out open to Spade. "There's the number of the taxi that hauled him. I got that much for you." "Thanks." Spade copied the number on the back of an envelope. "Any forwarding address?" "No. He just come in carrying a big suitcase, and went upstairs and packed and come down with his stuff, and paid his bill and got a taxi and went without anybody hearing what he told the driver." "How about his trunk?" Luke's lower lip sagged. "By God," he said, "I forgot that. Come on." They went up to Cairo's room. The trunk was there. It was closed but not locked. They raised the lid. The trunk was empty. Luke said, "What do you know about that?" Spade did not say anything. Spade went back to his office. Effie Perine's eyes questioned him. "Missed him," he grumbled, and passed into his private room. She followed him in. He sat in his chair and began to roll a cigarette. She sat on the desk in front of him and put her toes on a corner of his chair seat. "What about Miss O'Shaughnessy?" she demanded. "I missed her, too," he replied, "but she had been there." "On the La Paloma?" "The La is a lousy combination," he said. "Stop it. Be nice, Sam. Tell me." He set fire to his cigarette, pocketed the lighter, patted her shins, and said, "Yes, La Paloma. She got down there at a little after noon yesterday." He drew his brows down. "That means she went straight there after leaving the cab at the ferry building. It's only a few piers away. The captain wasn't there. His name's Jacoby, and she asked for him by name. He was uptown on business. That would mean he didn't expect her, or not at that time, anyhow. She waited there till he came back at 4 o'clock. They spent the time from then till mealtime in his cabin, and she ate with him." He inhaled and exhaled smoke, turned his head aside to spit a yellow tobacco flake off his lip, and went on. "After the meal, Captain Jacoby had 3 more visitors. One of them was Cairo, and one was Gutman, and one was the kid who delivered Gutman's message to you yesterday. Those 3 came together, while Bridget was there, and the 5 of them did a lot of talking in the captain's cabin. It's hard to get anything out of the crew, but they had a row, and somewhere around 11 that night a gun went off there in the captain's cabin. The watchman beat it down there, but the captain met him outside and told him there was nothing the matter. There's a fresh bullet hole in one corner of the cabin, up high enough to make it likely that the bullet didn't go through anybody to get there. As far as I could learn, there was only that one shot fired, but as far as I could learn wasn't very far." He scowled and inhaled smoke again. "Well, they left at around midnight, the captain and his 4 visitors, all together, and all of them seemed to have been walking all right. I got that from the watchman. I haven't been able to get hold of the custom-house men who were on duty there then. That's all of it. The captain hasn't been back since. He didn't keep a date this noon with some shipping agents, and they haven't found him to tell him about the fire." "And the fire?" Spade shrugged. "I don't know. It was discovered in the hold aft, in the rear basement, late this morning. The chances are it got started sometime yesterday. They got it out all right, though it did damage enough. Nobody would talk about it much while the captain's away. It's the—" The corridor door opened. Spade shut his mouth. Effie Perrine jumped down from the desk, but a man opened the connecting door before she could reach it. "Where's Spade?" he asked. His voice brought Spade up erect and alert in his chair. It was a voice harsh and rasping with agony, and with the strain of keeping two words from being smothered by the liquid bubbling that ran under and behind them. Effie Perrine, frightened, stepped out of the man's way. He stood in the doorway with his soft dark hat crushed between his head and the top of the doorframe. He was nearly 7 feet tall. A black overcoat cut long and straight like a sheath, buttoned from throat to knees, exaggerated his leanness. His shoulders stuck out, high, thin, and angular. His bony face, weather-coarsened, age-lined, was the color of damp sand, and was damp with sweat on cheeks and chin. His eyes were dark and bloodshot, and mad above lower lids that hung down to show pink inner membrane. Held tight against the left side of his chest by a black sleeved forearm that ended in a yellowish claw was a brown paper-wrapped parcel bound with thin rope, an ellipsoid somewhat larger than an American football. The tall man stood in the doorway, and there was nothing to show that he saw Spade. He said, "You have—" and then the liquid bubbling came up in his throat and submerged whatever else he said. He put his other hand over the hand that held the ellipsoid. Holding himself straight, rigid, and not putting his hands out to break his fall, he fell forward as a tree falls. Spade, wooden-faced and nimble, sprang from his chair and caught the falling man. When Spade caught him, the man's mouth opened, and a little blood spurted out, and the brown-wrapped parcel dropped from the man's hands and rolled across the floor until the foot of the desk stopped it. Then the man's knees bent, and he bent at the waist, and his thin body became limber inside the sheath-like overcoat, sagging in Spade's arm so that Spade could not hold it up from the floor. Spade lowered the man gently until he lay on the floor on his left side. The man's eyes, dark and bloodshot, but not now mad, were wide open and still. His mouth was open as when blood had spurted from it, but no more blood came from it, and all his long body was as still as the floor on which it lay. Spade said, "Lock the door." While Effie Perrine, her teeth chattering, fumbled with the corridor door's lock, Spade knelt beside the thin man, turned him over on his back, and ran a hand down inside his overcoat. When he withdrew his hand presently, it came out smeared with blood. The sight of his bloody hand brought not the least nor briefest of changes in Spade's face. Holding that hand up where it would touch nothing, he took his lighter out of his pocket with his other hand. He snapped on the flame and held the flame close to first one and then the other of the thin man's eyes. The eyes, lids, balls, irises, and pupils, remained frozen, immobile. Spade extinguished the flame and returned the lighter to his pocket. He moved on his knees around to the man's side, and using his one clean hand, unbuttoned the tubular overcoat and opened it. The inside of the overcoat was wet with blood, and the double-breasted blue jacket beneath it was sodden. The jacket's lapels, where they crossed over the man's chest, and both sides of his coat immediately below that point, were mangled as if chewed. Spade rose and went to the washbowl in the outer office. Effie Perrine, wan and trembling and holding herself upright by means of a hand and her back against the door, whispered, Is he?" "Yes. He's been shot through the chest, maybe half a dozen times." Spade began to wash his hands. "Oughtn't we—" she began, but he cut her short. "It's too late for a doctor now, and I've got to think before we do anything." He finished washing his hands and began to rinse the bowl. He couldn't have gone far with those in him. If he... Why in hell couldn't he have stood up long enough to tell us something? He frowned at the girl, rinsed his hands again, and picked up a towel. "Pull yourself together. For God's sake, don't get sick on me now." He threw the towel down and ran fingers through his hair. "We'll have a look at that bundle." He went into the inner office again, stepped over the dead man's legs, and picked up the brown paper-wrapped parcel. When he felt its weight, his eyes glowed. He put it on his desk, turning it over so that the knotted part of the rope was uppermost. The knot was hard and tight. He took out his pocket-knife and cut the rope. The girl had left the door, and edging around the dead man with her face turned away, had come to Spade's side. As she stood there, with her hands on a corner of the desk, watching him pull the rope loose and push aside the brown paper, excitement began to supplant nausea in her face. "Do you think it is?" she whispered. "We'll soon know," Spade said, his big fingers busy with the inner husk of coarse gray paper 3 sheets thick that the brown paper's removal had revealed. Though his face was hard and dull, his eyes were shining. When he had put the gray paper out of his way, he had an egg-shaped mass of pale excelsior wadded tight. His fingers tore the wad apart, and then he had the foot-high figure of a bird, black as coal and shiny where its polish was not dulled by wood dust and fragments of excelsior. Spade laughed. He put a hand down on the bird, a hand whose widespread fingers had ownership in their curving. He put his other arm around Effie Perrine and crushed her body to his. "We've got the damn thing, Angel," he said. "Ouch, you're hurting me." He took his arm away from her, picked the blackbird up in both hands, and shook it to dislodge clinging excelsior. Then he stepped back, holding it up in front of him, blowing dust off it, regarding it triumphantly. Effie Perrine made a horrified face and screamed, pointing at his feet. He looked down at his feet. His last backward step had brought his left heel into contact with the dead man's hand, pinching a 1/4 inch of flesh at a side of the palm between heel and floor. Spade jerked his foot away from the hand. The telephone bell rang. He nodded at the girl. She turned to the desk and put the receiver to her ear. She said, "Hello? Yes? Who? Oh, yes." Her eyes became large. "Yes, yes. Hold the line." Her mouth suddenly stretched wide and fearful. She cried, "Hello, hello, hello," into the telephone. She rattled the hook and cried, "Hello," twice. Then she sobbed and jumped around to face Spade, who was close beside her now. "It was Miss O'Shaughnessy," she said wildly. "She wants you. She's in danger. She's at the Alexandria. Her voice was... Oh, it was awful, Sam. And something happened to her before she could finish. Go help her, Sam." Spade put the Falcon on the desk and scowled gloomily. "I've got to take care of this fellow first," he said, pointing his thumb at the thin corpse on the floor. She beat his chest with her fists, crying, "No, you've got to go to her. Don't you see, Sam? He had the thing that was hers, and he came to you with it. Don't you see? He was helping her, and they killed him, and now she's... Oh, you've got to go, Sam." "All right." Spade pushed her away and bent over his desk, putting the blackbird back into its nest of excelsior, bending the paper around it, working swiftly, making a larger and clumsy package. "As soon as I've gone, phone the police. Tell them how it happened, but don't drag any names in. You don't know. I got the phone call, and I told you I had to go out, but I didn't say where." He cursed the rope for being tangled, yanked it into straightness, and began to bind up the package. "Forget this thing. Tell it as it happened, but forget he had a bundle." He chewed his lower lip. "Unless they pin you down. If they seem to know about it, you'll have to admit it. But that's not likely. If they do, then I took the bundle away with me unopened." He finished tying the knot and straightened up with the parcel under his left arm. "Get it straight now. Everything happened the way it happened, but without this dingus, unless they already know about it. Don't deny it, just don't mention it. And I got the phone call, not you. and you don't know anything about anybody else having any connection with this fellow. You don't know anything about him, and you can't talk about my business until you see me. Got it?" "Yes, Sam. Do you know who he is?" He grinned wolfishly. He said. "But I'd guess he was Captain Jacoby, late master of the Paloma." He picked up his hat and put it on. He looked thoughtfully at the dead man and then around the room. "Hurry, Sam," the girl begged. "Sure," he promised absent-mindedly. "I'll hurry. Might not hurt to get those few scraps of Excelsior off the floor before the police come. And maybe you ought to try to get hold of Sid. No." He rubbed his chin. "We'll leave him out of it for a while. It'll look better. I'd keep the door locked till they come." He took his hand away from his chin and rubbed her cheek. "You're a damn good man, sister," he said, and went out. End of chapter 16.